Oh, it's I know she's here. Wait. Okay, are we live? We're live. All right. Maybe give a few seconds for people to filter in. Only a few. We've got a full program for you today. All right, good morning and welcome to Open edX 2018. Yeah. Thank you all for coming. It's a pleasure to be here in Montreal. My name is John Mark Walker. I am a longtime open source community guy. I came to edX in February to help run the Open edX community. So I'll be meeting a lot of you out and about, and I hope to trade stories about what we're doing. This just tells you what we're doing for the morning keynote. This morning we have Anant Agarwal. We have Fiona Hollands giving a keynote address, and then we'll give you kind of the state of Open edX as it is today. Some housekeeping items. The hashtag, the official hashtag, is Open edX 2018. So use it on Twitter, Instagram, and any of your other social media accounts. You can see some other information here about joining our Slack channel. Our Slack channel has over 2,500 people now. I'm actually really proud of that. It's very active. If you haven't been there, you should. It's a very active place to find information. One other very important housekeeping item that pertains to our afternoon plenary keynote. Because when we come here at 4 o'clock for the afternoon plenary, you'll need to make sure you bring all your stuff with you. Because after that plenary, we go directly to the reception this evening. And by the time that ends, HEC will have closed, which means you will not be able to get access to your things. So when you come here at 4 o'clock, please bring all your stuff with you. Thanks. I want to thank all of our sponsors very briefly here. We'll give Microsoft a chance to talk about what they're doing later, but I've been very encouraged to see all that Microsoft is doing to support the Open edX community. They're a sponsor for tonight's reception, so be sure to thank them. Perversity. Perversity has been a long-time sponsor. Thank you, Perversity. When you're eating lunch, make sure you thank Perversity as well, because they're sponsoring our lunch. AppSembler. AppSembler is a long-time contributor to the Open edX community. Thank you, AppSembler. I heard some woohoos. Raccoon Gang, another long-time contributor and participant in the Open edX community. Thank you for being here. And OpenCraft. OpenCraft is a significant contributor, pull requests and code that we've all been able to witness over the years. Thank you to OpenCraft. And education, a new one for this year. Thank you for being here. We look forward to working with you and seeing all we can do within the Open edX community. And then here are our premier sponsors. We have Arbisoft, DRC Systems, and right here in Montreal, ERP SimLab. And the contributing sponsors, EduNext, IBL Education, and Extension Engine. A lot of these people are longtime contributors and participants in the Open edX community, and we want to thank all of our sponsors for all of your contributions and help with the Open edX community. Thanks. Thank you. There you go. And of course, I missed one. Class Central, the media sponsor. We're actually very pleased to have them with us. They've been exceptionally good at creating outstanding content around kind of educational community, and we're very happy to have them as well. So make sure to visit our sponsors. We have tables allotted behind the registration desk. You can easily find them there. They'll have helpful people there to tell you about all they're doing. So make it a point to visit the tables and converse with them. And then finally, I want to thank our hosts. And we have with us today, we have John Talbot, who's going to talk about why they're hosting us and all they get out of it. And please, take it away.
Bonjour à tous, bienvenue à Montréal. Welcome to Montreal. We're extremely happy to be hosting the sessions today and tomorrow, obviously. When the people from edX asked us if we wanted to do it, it took about 30 seconds to accept the invitation. We believe that edX is doing really important work. They're providing us with wonderful software that we can use to transform education and how we deliver stuff to our students. So we're very proud to be the host of this conference. I'd just like to explain a little bit who we are and why there's 3 institutions. So we're basically 3 independent universities. HEC Montreal and Polytechnique are specialized schools that are affiliated with the University of Montreal. HEC is the business school, Polytechnique is the engineering school. So you'll move from one school to another. We have different staff, different IT, so we're really quite independent. We're the largest school in the university in Quebec. HEC is about 10,000 students, Polytechnique is about 8, University of Montreal about 45. So it's a pretty large campus. We basically teach in French, but don't worry, all our staff is quite bilingual, so there won't be any problem. But we do have some programs in English, and we have a platform in Quebec which is called EduLib, which provides MOOCs also, and we're a client of Open edX for the last few years. So I wish you a very good conference in Montreal. I hope you're going to take some time to enjoy the city. We ordered nice weather. I think it's getting there. So I think you should have a good time. So have a nice 2 days. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, John. And so now we get to our next keynote speaker, a man who needs very little introduction. Most of you probably know him. Anant Agarwal is going to come up and give the opening address. Thank you, Anant.
John, is there a remote somewhere? Clicker. Thank you. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Montreal. John Talbot and team, thank you very much to HEC and Polytechnique and also UMontreal for hosting us in this absolutely beautiful city. So I'm really delighted to have a chat with you all this morning and dream. This time around, I'll be dreaming a little with you all. As you know, I tend to be a dreamer, but today I'll spend a large part of my talk dreaming with you as to how I need your help and the kind of world we want to create in 2022. So before I do that, I know a lot of you are interested in where things are with edX and also where things are with Open edX, so I'll talk about that very quickly. So today, edX, that's the edX.org destination, has grown to 16 million learners. And as you know, at least so far, edX.org is the biggest Open edX instance. But as I say in India, when I sort of view all the Open edX instances as our children, and as teachers view in India, when a pupil or a student overtakes a parent or the teacher, there's no greater joy for the teacher. So I'm hoping that one of these days, one of you will overtake us in total number of registrations, and I don't think that day is too far away. So 16 million learners on edX.org, 2,000 plus courses from about 140 institutional partners. We are growing at the institutional partner level very slowly at this point. We have close to 60 million course enrollments, which says that on average students are enrolling in about four courses. We welcome quite a few new partners to edX. Red Hat is one example. Federica from Italy is another example. And Federica is particularly interesting, but they are probably the world's oldest or second oldest university that is a lay university. They are not a church-founded university, roughly 800 years old. It's amazing. I was in Salamanca last week, and near Madrid, maybe a couple hours from Madrid, giving a talk at a rectors conference with 800 rectors, and to stand there in Salamanca, which is 800 years old. And it's amazing, in Europe you sneeze and 100 years go by, so it's pretty amazing. So again, welcome to our partners. The past couple of years, we've launched many new programs. We've launched MicroMasters. So today we have about 50 MicroMasters programs from about 30 universities. MicroMasters in AI from Columbia, Business Analytics from Columbia, Robotics from Penn, Management, Logistics and Supply Chain from MIT, Manufacturing from MIT, Marketing Analytics from Berkeley. The list goes on and on. It's a very radical new credential, very exciting. We also launched about 60 professional certificate programs. The difference is that the MicroMasters offer a path. It's an important standalone credential, but they also offer a path to a full master's with the credit transfer. The professional certificates, as the name implies, more skills-focused for professionals, but they don't necessarily have a credit pathway. Open edX. You guys are really kicking butt out there. There's, believe it or not, 18,000 courses. There are 1,600 instances of Open edX out there. This is stunning, incredible. Keep up the good work. For those of you who were awake during my presentation in Madrid at this time last year, how many instances did I say we had? 800. Someone mentioned 800. So we've doubled. It's amazing. Absolutely amazing. Keep it up. 64 countries, 34 languages. And if you count Open edX and edX, today we are up to 36 million learners. So Open edX today is the single biggest platform for learning in the world. And you made it happen. Congratulations. And you guys are growing exponentially. I can't draw charts anymore. So this chart shows, and this is a true chart. It's not an artist's rendition. It shows the number of Open edX sites over time. So this is the time axis. And this is the number of Open edX instances. And this is the number of courses. As you can see, the number of courses and the sites are up. This is an exponential curve, doubling roughly every year. It's absolutely remarkable. Hey, edX team, soon we'll have to begin drawing this on a log scale so we can make sense of this region up here. But again, I'm just so extraordinarily proud of you all. And many of you have crossed 1 million learners. Fun. I think Catherine, my friend Catherine Mongenet is here from Paris. Thank you for being here. 1.4 million learners. Shuetang in China, 12 million. A million here, a million there. Numbers add up. Excuse me. EduLib, which is the Quebecan platform with the 3 universities and more universities joining it. What is it, 85,000? 85,000 unique learners. So, these numbers add up and goes up to 20 million. So keep it up. This is fantastic. And I will need your help for 2022, and you will see what I'm going to ask you to do for me. Okay. So much for numbers. What I want to do in the next part of my talk is I want to dream with you. So all of you have heard of, how many of you have heard of the United Nations SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals? All right, let's do a test. What's SDG 4? What does SDG 4 have to do with? Education. Good. So someone knows. Someone's read the SDGs. So what we thought we'd do is, at the edX Global Forum a few months ago, in my speech, I launched the Reimagine Education Goals for 2022. Inspired by the SDGs, these are called REGs, regs. Reimagine Education Goals. I launched it in 17, in 5 years. So now it's 4 for 2022. We have 5 goals. And this is not just for edX. We're going to be able to hit these goals because of you. I'm relying very heavily on you. Okay, and you'll see what these goals are. The first goal is regarding education access. I have a precise goal for us to hit in 2022. We have a quality of education goal. The three major trends in education: lifelong learning, omni-channel education, and modular education. So we have goals for those three as well. 5 goals. 5 goals, 5 years, 2022. And I will need your help. Let's start with the first one. Expanding education access. To first order, most of us are in this to democratize education, increase education access. What have we done so far? So far, when I say we, it's not me, it's not edX, it's you, it's this community. It's all the open edX, including edX. So what we've done so far is that we've contributed together to the MOOC movement. We've contributed to, we built the mobile platform, we've internationalized the platform, the multi-language support, and many of you have contributed very heavily to the various language supports. So for example, we got a lot of help from EDROC, which is the the first Arabic national platform in Jordan, and one of the very, very early, I think the first 1 or 2 national adoptions of Open edX, and they really helped with right to left, for instance, and a lot of help from all of you. And of course, making the platform open source was a big part of our goal. And I promise you, when we open sourced it, it was 2013 or thereabouts, I did not dream that within 3 to 4 years, the number of learners on Open edX would begin far surpassing that on edX. It's just absolutely fantastic. So that's what we've done so far. We've got about 36 million learners together so far. Okay, here comes the goal for 2022. What do we want to accomplish? When we meet for Open edX in 2022, I would like to be able to announce 100 million learners on Open edX. Can we do it? Let's do it. 100 million in 2022. You saw that exponential there? For Open edX, keep it up. edX can't do this alone. You will need to help us do this. So we want to reach 100 million learners, and of course, edX is absolutely committed to the Open edX movement, and your help to get us there. We will support national platforms, and we continue to do that, and I'll show you a bunch of examples. More recently, Israel launched campus.il, which is a national platform, and many other platforms are coming up even as we speak. In order to make this happen, we need to further internationalize and launch more language platforms. edX itself, we've launched a year ago at the conference in Madrid. We launched our Spanish platform, edX.org/es is our Spanish platform, so we launched a Spanish platform. And already today, we've grown to more than 2 million learners on our Spanish language platform. And so we want to further internationalize and continue diverse offerings and credentials, not just at the master's level. So we've launched MicroMasters, but we need to be offering more at the college level, pre-masters, bachelors, and also at the high school level in in-demand fields. Okay, so we need to get to 100 million in 2022. Okay, second, Reimagine education goal. We want to increase the quality of education. It's not just enough to get the numbers. We need to increase the quality of education, both online and in person. What have we done so far? So far, we've, again, together done quite a bit. We have what I call a credit grade platform. So edX natively supports credit-bearing courses, and we've been doing so for many years, starting with Arizona State and edX's partnership to create the Global Freshman Academy. And the credit grade platform has involved a lot of, first of all, many rich and rigorous problem types. And a majority of those problem types actually have come from you. So anyone here from Stanford? Thank you. So for example, one of the hinting problem types came out of Stanford. And so many problems. Anyone here from UBC? British Columbia? Oh, I guess a different language. Oh, there you are. Welcome. So from UBC, I'm very proud of your contribution for peer instruction. And peer instruction enables the case method. So on edX, you can do the case method that business schools love to teach with. And so that came out of UBC. And many such problem types, drag and drop, image responses, the list goes on and on. And a large majority of that have come through contributions from the open edX community. MIT created the equation editor, the matrix algebra. I mean, the list goes on and on. I could be here all day talking about your contributions to building a credit grade platform. The virtual proctoring, a number of you are integrating virtual proctoring solutions into the platform. We've also done a bunch of work with a CogSci-inspired work. So for example, the basic pedagogy of the edX platform is active learning, and you've seen many results on this in the past. Spaced repetition is a big deal. How many of you are aware that there's one course on edX today that is running spaced repetitions? How many of you know that? Oh, come on, the edX people know that. There you go. So a MIT researcher worked with edX, and now there's this Wacko Circuits course on edX that tends to be a pilot for all of these things that now has spaced repetitions built in. It is so cool. So what spaced repetition does is, cognitive science has shown that if you show somebody a problem or a result in increasingly spaced intervals, so you show them something today, then you show them the same thing an hour later, then you show them the same thing a day later, you show them the same thing a week later, then a month later, then 6 months later. Okay, that really sticks in their mind because it goes from the short-term memory into deeper memory. It's called spaced learning, and it's it's a well-known technique. And so they've implemented this in edX. It's now available on edX. I'm not sure if it's publicly released yet. Nimisha is shaking her head. But essentially what it does is it takes all the problems you've asked before and then it randomly selects certain problems and gives them to the student in a way that they see the same thing at increasing intervals of time. So just one example, some really, really cool stuff. Cohorts and teams, ways to create small group learning. And of course, all the work that's happening on analytics and research. Also launched RDX, Research Data Exchange, where edX makes available to all our partners that opt in, reasonably anonymized. There's no such thing as perfect anonymization, as you know, but best effort anonymization of data for research. And so quite exciting. So these are all helping enhance the quality of education. So what are our goals? So for 2022, let's commit ourselves to doing the following. First, let's truly leverage the power of digital technology for learning. Okay, truly leverage it. Okay, what are examples of this? By 2022, I would like to see AI-powered personalized learning as standard on edX. Let's commit to it. Let's make it happen. I know that Nimisha Astagiri from our team is leading a little working group, and a number of you are working on this component. And I would like to see it happen as a standard type in edX and Open edX by 2022. We have seen some examples of adaptive learning already. Many courses on edX are doing it. So for example, Super Earths from Harvard uses a learning engine and does adaptive learning. Quant Methods, another example. There's many courses. School Yourself has some, I think it's geometry and trig courses that do it. So the variety of experiments. But I'd like this to become a standard part of the platform. Okay, so let's make it happen. VR and AR, it's there. Is Labster here? So Labster, for example, has an Open edX demonstration of VR and AR for labs with headsets. So let's make it happen as a standard problem type. Let's just make it. Harness the power of networks. edX and some partners did some early research on crowdsourcing of hinting, getting hints from the crowds. Let's do things like that. Unleash the power of cognitive science, for example, retrieval learning. Let's really develop these things and make it available on the platform. And of course, deep analytics, continue work on that. I think one of the things where I'd like to see us do much better is create mechanisms for platform stickiness, where create mechanisms in the platform where learners want to keep coming back for more. Okay, we need to do that across courses, not just within a course. So these are some of my goals for 2022. And in 2022, when I come and give a talk, okay, I will have egg on my face if you guys don't deliver on these things. Okay, you have 5 years. Okay, 5 years is in exponential time. That's a long time. Okay, so take notes. Okay, I'm going to be saying we've done this in 2022, so you guys better make it happen. All right. So I see 3 big trends in education, and I have some goals for these 3 as well. Lifelong learning, modular learning, and omni-channel learning. Okay, education will be transformed by digital in these 3 ways. So let's talk about each of these 3. So lifelong learning says that learning will move from a model where people come to university at the age of 18 and learn for 4 years and then leave, to a model where they'll be learning throughout life. Learning in small chunks throughout life as opposed to just once and done at the age of 18. So what have we done so far to enable lifelong learning? So as an example, we've created new credentials for lifelong learning. The professional certificate programs and micromasters are examples where people can learn online and be learning throughout life. We've worked to bring in corporations into the mix. And each of the micromasters and professional certificates have corporate endorsements. And we're now taking it one step further, where the corporates are now making interview commitments for people that complete MicroMasters. So as an example, GE made a commitment last year to interview anybody from Massachusetts that completed one of 4 MicroMasters. RIT Cybersecurity, Columbia's AI, MIT Supply Chain, and University of Maryland's Cloud Computing. They will guarantee an interview. Similarly, anybody here from Tech Mahindra? From India? So they are one of India's top 3 software juggernaut powerhouses. They're using edX now to upskill 120,000 of their employees. And as part of that, they made a commitment that they will guarantee an interview to anybody in India. Anybody, and India is a big country. Anybody in India that completes one of 10 MicroMasters. Automatic guaranteed interview. And so this is a big deal in India and many other countries where even getting the interview, even if you know the stuff, is hard. If you don't have the right pedigree, if you don't know the right person, if your father doesn't have the right last name, it's tough to get an interview. But this is democratizing the interview process if you complete some of these programs. So this is very exciting. What do we want to do next to lifelong learning? So we would like to commit to the following over the next 5 years. Let's create a true community of learners that come to a sticky platform and are learning on a regular basis for life. Let's create a set of portfolio of credentials that enable learners to demonstrate their skills at various levels, not just at the graduate level. We also need to partner with more companies. So right now we have 2 companies that are guaranteeing, thank you, Anant, guaranteeing interviews. But how do we make this a much more, not a one-off, but a much more continuous process where companies are routinely accepting some of these new lifelong credentials in addition to the kind of degrees that they offer. So let's get these accepted for lifelong learning. Next, omni-channel education. So retail has gone omni-channel in a big way. Omni-channel retail, where Walmart is going online, Amazon is going in person. So retail has gone omni-channel, so will education. So we've done quite a lot for omni-channel education, both in person and online. Education will become omni-channel. So for universities, I believe that over the next 5, 10, 15 years, if you don't go omni-channel, I think you will have a problem. Universities have to go omni-channel, have to create an in-person experience and an online experience. I mean, learners will expect that. There's 3 omni-channel approaches: online before campus, online during campus, and online after campus. One of the first online before campuses was the Global Freshman Academy that we launched. Online during campus, as an example, IT University in Pakistan adopts the data science MicroMasters from UC San Diego and edX as part of their on-campus master's degree in data science. So many such examples exist today. So what must we challenge ourselves to do by 2022? So I'd like us to, for universities, a challenge for universities. By 2022, can a number of you commit to accelerating 1 year of a bachelor's degree because of online content? The MicroMasters, we've done that already. We are accelerating 25% of a master's degree. Within 5 years, can you commit to so online before campus, OBC, accelerate an online degree by 1 year? ODC, online during campus, universities commit to offering 20% of undergraduate education fully online. So even if you're on campus, allow your students to take online courses for 20% of their credit. Georgia Tech, Zui Galil is here. Maybe he'll mention it in his talk. At Georgia Tech, Zui allows freshman students to take a fully online Python course, 100% online for credit. And the results are pretty amazing. At MIT, the circuits course, learners can take it fully online, and they get their credits just like on a regular MIT course. So universities, can you commit to 20% of undergraduate education doable completely online? Finally, modular education. What have we done so far? Instead of education coming in big chunks, master's degrees and bachelor's degrees, let's break up education into modules. In Lego-like fashion, call it a Lego education, where you can break things up into small modules, and you can do all kinds of crazy things once education becomes modular. Okay, so what have we done so far? One example is the MicroMasters programs and the unbundling of degrees. We've done that at the master's level. This is huge. I mean, can you imagine? Can you imagine that 5 or 6 years ago when people talked about this, that we would be able to successfully unbundle the degree into a modular component? It's unbelievable. When you sit down and think about it. IIM Bangalore, for example, they have offer a MicroMasters in business that continues on to a campus program in business. Just many, many examples of this. And so that's a huge, huge first step. Once things become modular, all kinds of things are possible. You can do stacked master's degrees. So Georgia Tech and edX have launched their online master's degree in data analytics. MicroMasters in analytics, you can leave if you want with a MicroMasters. Or you can continue on for a full online master's degree in analytics for $9,900. You can create stacked programs. It's like Lego stacking. You can create sharing. The IT University in Pakistan shares a MicroMasters. You can share, you can stack, you can share. It's pretty amazing. You can also modularize and unbundle other services like mentoring and so on. So modularization, unbundling, the networked university, these are all the same thing. So with that, let me put out a gauntlet for a challenge for modularization by the year 2022. Just like we did for the masters, do we have the guts to launch a modular credential at the bachelor's level? Okay, which university do you think will be the first one to do it? Well, watch the headlines. Okay, can we do a modular program at the bachelor's level with a pathway to credit? Can we create similar things where we modularize other components and create networked effects where universities get maybe mentoring and other services through a network of organizations? Can we create a credit exchange? We have modular programs and you have a credit exchange where I challenge universities. By 2022, would you be able to accept 25% of credit when someone has earned it at another university? Why is that so hard to do? It's happening today with the MicroMasters. Curtin University, RIT, University of Queensland, John's here, University of Queensland will accept credit for the MicroMasters in supply chain management into their own management program. So there are many, many examples of this. How about making it broader? So with that, the 5 Reimagine education goals on access, quality, modularization, omni-channel, and lifelong learning. So with that, I have a few minutes for questions. Thank you. We have folks walking down with the microphones. I think someone in the middle. Oh, we should get that toy that you throw around.
Okay. Hi, my name is Fred. I'm just curious, in edX, how much interactivity and engagement do you see in the future? You mentioned tutoring, you mentioned virtual reality. How much real-time collaboration engagement do you see?
I expect that even for online programs, right now, there's not a lot. Many of our online, so we have online master's degrees on edX. We'll be launching another 5 to 10 of them later on this year. Many of the credit-bearing programs have live interaction. So what people use is they use various mechanisms to create a live model. They use things like Hangouts. They use things like Zoom. Are the Shindig folks here? So, there's Shindig, which is another way of doing Hangouts. So many people are using, and they've all built XBlock and other LTI integrations into edX. And so there are ways of doing those live interactions. Mentoring is another example, but I really see the live interaction using these kinds of cohorts of students interacting directly with the professor or with other students as becoming an integral part where I believe most credit-bearing courses will have some of that. A lot more than we have today, of course. Yes?
Hi, this is Raju from TCS. So two things, you mentioned about bachelor's and master's and modularization there. So at the extreme end of the spectrum, which is at the entry to bachelor's level, the high school, that space, and at the other end, the PhDs. And we are seeing even online PhDs out there in the world. And we're looking at the challenges that are there in the high school and bachelor's front on the other end. And on that end, we see, the whole digital divide. Some people are able to get into these programs because of structured methods. A lot of people get left out because of, non-ability to even get into proper systems. Any thoughts on these two extremes?
I think, frankly, digital education can take a big crack at many of those problems. I'll pick one to answer. Each of those is a speech, right? I'll just pick one, which is how do you enable students, say at the high school level, to get into college, but they don't have the right credentials. So for example, I know of places where if your last name is the same as the local honcho, you'll get into the college in India, right? Or if you have a lot of money, you can get in. Or if you can pay huge amounts of money to tutors and they train you for the SATs, you can increase your scores. It's well known that SATs are almost a test of your parental income. And so, but that's our system today and it's completely broken. Instead, what if you went to open admissions? With MicroMasters, it's open admission. Online, you don't have the capacity limits of a classroom, so everybody is welcome. So you can admit anybody, and so MicroMasters is open admissions. There is no admissions. Keep your SATs at home, your GREs, your TOEFLs, all of that stuff, not important. You just try. If you can cut it, hey, you'll get the MicroMasters. And then the MicroMasters scores become your entry into a full online master should you choose to do it. So I believe online can break the shackles of many of these constraints that have bound us over the past decades to hundreds of years. And I think a lot of these entry mechanisms should just go away and democratize entry into colleges. I think it's time for one last question.
You mentioned the plans around the multi-institutional content sharing. Could you just maybe explain that a bit further? What are you trying to accomplish? Because we have some thoughts around there. It would be great to get a better understanding of what you're intending.
Love to chat.
Right.
To me, modularization is a necessary first step. It's like creating, instead of having big pictures, you create puzzle pieces, Lego blocks. And once you have the Lego blocks, you can mix and match in different ways. So by sharing, I meant, why should a university today, let's say I want to launch an online master's degree in computer science, right? And I really want to teach AI as part of it. Now, I know that University of Montreal, Polytechnique, and HEC have some of the top deep learning AI people in the world. And let's say my university does not. So how do I teach AI? Imagine if we could collaborate where they create a MicroMasters in AI, I create a MicroMasters in systems or architecture, and someone else does a MicroMasters in software engineering, databases and stuff. And imagine being able to combine that, and once a student completes a MicroMasters from University A, from B, from C, they then get an online degree in the end. Assuming online degrees are still around in 20 years. So that's what I meant by sharing. The example I gave of IT University in Pakistan was they had a computer science master's. They didn't have a data science component. They wanted to offer a data science master. So what they did was they have the students take 6 courses from their professors in Pakistan in Lahore. And the remaining 4 courses, they have the students go online and take the University of California, San Diego MicroMasters in data science on edX. And they then give those students a degree in data science. So that's an example of sharing across universities and having a credit grade platform where you can have rigorous tests and we have rigorous credentials will enable that. But modularization is going to be a key. Right. So with that, let me thank you all I think we're running out of time, so let me pause there. And thank you all once again. Thank you. With that, I'm just totally delighted to welcome my friend Fiona Hollands to the stage. And Fiona is a leader of education. She's well known to a lot of you at the Teachers College in Columbia. And I like to joke that edX produces a lot of data. Fiona makes it talk. Fiona, take over.
Thank you, Anant. Oh, great. So, good morning, everyone. I just want to warn you before we begin that the way John, Mark, Walker, and Ned set this up was that Anant would kick the day off with this rousing and rosy speech, and then I would follow behind and sprinkle a few raindrops on your party, or at least make you wish that you brought an umbrella just in case it rains. So, what kind of person is good at casting doubt and uncertainty on an otherwise uplifting occasion? A researcher, of course, and that is exactly what I am. I work at Teachers College, Columbia University, a school of education, where we care primarily about whether and how students learn in educational experiences. We hew close to the dictionary definition of learning, by which we mean whether students gain knowledge, skills, or understanding through instruction, study, or experience. Mere participation or engagement in a learning experience, or even completion of a course of study, does not guarantee that anything new is learned. But within Teachers College, I work at the Center for Benefit Cost Studies of Education, where we recognize that beyond just learning, there are other things that can be gained from education experiences. Connecting with other people, building status, earning credentials, all of which can lead to employability and earnings. So for us, the critical question is whether the time and effort to develop and deliver these experiences is worth it for the institutions, and whether participation in them is worth it for the learners. So what I'm planning to do for the next 33 minutes and 28 seconds is to tell you first about some of the research I've done on MOOCs, in which I've been investigating the costs and what institutions and students get out of them. And then we're going to look at a number of predictions that were made 5 years ago about where MOOCs would be in 5 years' time, which brings us very conveniently to the present, if my math adds up. And we'll see, being in the right place and right time, whether those predictions have panned out. And finally, I'm going to suggest some possible future directions for MOOCs and give you all some challenges to work on. So let's start with my research findings on MOOCs over the past few years. We'll go back to the dawn of the XMOOC. When Stanford University announced it was offering 3 courses online to anybody who wanted to sign up, I was immediately intrigued. The prospect of high-quality instruction offered at mass scale seemed like the perfect candidate for cost-effective education. But remember that for anything to be cost-effective, it has to be effective in the first place. Back then, somewhat naively, I thought that the way that MOOCs would be assessed for effectiveness would be whether they improved educational outcomes. So I waited and watched for a couple of years to the point where I could actually collect data on costs and on effectiveness. I really had no trouble collecting information on what it costs universities to develop and deliver MOOCs, but it quickly became apparent that no one was collecting data on effectiveness, at least not in the way that I defined it. So I was left scratching my head for a while, wondering why universities were spending between $30,000 and $300,000 developing a MOOC without bothering to determine whether students were learning anything as a result. I did what I usually do when I don't understand something. I designed a study. And together with my co-researcher, Devayani Tirthali, we interviewed about 100 people in and around higher education and asked them what it was they were trying to accomplish with MOOCs. and we wrote a 200-page report, wrong way, summarizing our findings, which I know that at least one person has read in its entirety. So I won't be keeping you here all day to share the 200 pages, but let me focus on a couple of things which tie in pretty well with some of the things that Anant has been talking about. So first, what I want to do is to look at the goals of the people who invented MOOCs and see whether they've been achieved. I talked to both George Siemens and Stephen Downes, who taught the first ever CMOOC, or Connectivist MOOC, right here in Canada in 2008. And these are some excerpts from those interviews which address what they were trying to achieve. So I have to walk over here to be able to see what I have written. Okay, so for George Siemens, he was looking to create a social technical system of learning where the teacher's voice is not an essential hub, but instead a node in an overall network. He wanted the pedagogical model to emphasize creation and generation, and the emphasis was to be on each person participating in a space that they owned, creating a personal learning environment and a personal learning network. For Stephen Downes, the goal was to create tools and methods to help people acquire learning for themselves, rather than have learning provided to them by some provider or institute. So now let's contrast that with the goals of the first instructors of XMOOCs. And this is taken from an article that Andrew Ng and Jennifer Widom wrote in that 200-page report I mentioned. Their goals were highly scalable education, availability, giving every learner a good experience no matter how many people participated, giving instructors the opportunity to have much greater impact on the world than was ever possible before. And finally, facilitating blended learning and flipped classrooms for on-campus courses to make better use of student and faculty time. Does anyone see any similarities between the two sets of goals? I was hard-pressed to do so. So even though it was actually George Siemens who dubbed those first 3 Stanford courses MOOCs, I actually think they have very little in common, and I suggest that they're no longer lumped together. So those were the goals of the inventors of MOOCs. But what about the goals of the institutions who were offering them? We asked 83 of our interviewees about this, and some of them admitted that they really didn't have any goals when they jumped on the bandwagon, except perhaps to make sure that they weren't missing out on a solution to one of higher education's many problems. That strategy of identifying solutions and then looking for problems to solve with them has a name in organizational theory. It's called the garbage can model of decision making. And we in higher education are renowned for it. Still, we were able to categorize 6 major goals that universities were trying to achieve through MOOCs. And these look very similar to some that Anant talked about. Let's talk about how we've done on them. So first, not surprisingly, is extending reach and access. And really, it is apparent that we've reached over 80 million learners at this point, so reach and access have been extended, but perhaps not to everyone intended. I seem to recall that Anant used to show a slide of Indian school children sitting under a dusty bridge, inferring that MOOCs would someday be reaching them soon. I haven't seen that slide for a while, Anant. The next goal was improving the economics of higher education, and you'll have to bear with me a little bit because I have quite a lot to say about this. The economics can be looked at from 2 perspectives, the institution's perspective and then the learner's perspective. And of course, we got off to a very shaky start with the universities spending hundreds of thousands of dollars developing MOOCs and then offering them for free to some very happy learners. Clearly, that was not a sustainable situation. But as universities started to charge for certificates, they were able to recoup some of their costs. And in a few cases, they were actually making money. Let's take a look at a couple of examples here. and don't take the numbers overly seriously, but this is just for demonstration. So this is looking at potential revenues and costs with a couple of the more popular specializations. On the left-hand side, we have Johns Hopkins data science specialization. Anyone here from Johns Hopkins today who might have better numbers than this? Okay, so they've been running this specialization since about April of 2014. As of August last year, they had over 6,000 completers of the entire specialization. I'm estimating that about 80% of the people paid in full, with the other 20% being on financial aid. We know they were paying $49 a month. For approximately 9 months, that brings us for $2.2 million. And remember that these are just for the courses taken by people who completed the specialization. So Dawal, where did you go? Dawal was here. You have different numbers in your article because you included all the courses, not necessarily those that were constituted the entire specialization. But that brings it to a much higher number. And then on the cost side, I'm just hazarding a guess based on my own analysis of other people's MOOCs, of $150,000 for 9 MOOCs, that's a cost of $1.35 million, with net revenues almost $1 million. I don't know what the split is with Coursera, but I'm guessing that both of them are quite happy. On the other side, we have Wharton Online, which currently has 7 specializations, all in business subjects. Here we're looking at the revenues from all the course enrollments, not necessarily just from the people who completed the specialization or the course, using a similar 80% estimate on who paid fully. I calculated a weighted average because some of the courses were $49, some were $79, so the weighted average was 61, bringing us to $8 million. And using similar estimates on the costs, $5 million in costs with a net of $3 million-ish. Again, some very happy people. So the Johns Hopkins was, I believe, August 2014. Sorry, it's April 2014, and these numbers were until August last year. Not quite. And then for the specializations on the Wharton side, I think they've been running since about 2015, but many of the specializations are actually very new. So the first one they did was probably only just over like a year and a half ago. So they made quite a lot of money very quickly, as you might hope for a school of business. I think we could probably learn something from them. Okay, so I think the big challenge for MOOCs is really finding the right balance between lower costs and meaningful credentials for students on the one side and sustainability for the institutions on the other side. We may actually be approaching this in the MOOC-based online degrees which have been popping up here and there. They cost much less for the students than traditional degrees, but they're not free. And from what I can gather, some of these have been more successful than others. So let me talk about a few, why they may or may not be successful, and then raise some questions that I have about these programs. First, let's consider MIT's Supply Chain Management master's degree, which is the blended version of this. The first few courses, as Anant mentioned, can be taken as MOOCs, at the end of which the learner can earn a micromasters in supply chain management. As of July last year, they had 200,000 people who had enrolled in one of the 5 MOOCs. 19,000 had earned certificates. 1,100 finished all 5 MOOCs. 800 took the final exam. 622 passed. 130 applied to MIT's on-campus degree program to do the second semester, and around 40 or so enrolled in January, paying full price. They should have just finished up a week or 2 ago. Again, someone in the audience may have even better details than I do. But I'm less focused on the details and more again on the balance here. This seems to me like a big win for the students. They can earn a certificate, they can earn a micromasters, they can even go on to earn a full degree. On the MIT side, I think that the income from certificates alone are probably reaching in the order of $3 million. It's a great way for them to find students for admissions. and the students are paying full price when they come on campus. Now, this program is targeted at students who are already very well prepared and quite motivated. I suspect that one reason that MIT has not done a lot more of these is actually faculty resistance. But what I still want to know about this program is how well did the students who admitted via the MicroMasters perform compared to those who came through regular admissions? And what would happen if MIT accepted only students who came through one or more MOOCs? What might they be losing out on if they only admitted students this way? This afternoon, you're going to hear from Zvi about Georgia Tech's online Masters in Computer Science program, I imagine. Is that right? You guessed so. Okay. So this allows students to earn a master's degree for only $7,000. It seems like this program is working out well for the learners too. And I expect Zvi will tell us this afternoon it's working out well for Georgia Tech. But my question is, could all Georgia Tech degrees be offered for $7,000? Or are these just isolated examples being set up as loss leaders for the institutions offering them? What obstacles would need to be eliminated to allow for all Georgia Tech degrees to be offered for $7,000? And would it perchance involve eliminating tenured faculty, who, by the way, may each themselves cost hundreds of thousands of dollars? So while I actually think the MIT model provides the best balance in terms of benefits for students in the institution, I think both the MIT and Georgia Tech programs have been successful because they're targeting the kinds of learners who thrive in online learning environments. I actually have less confidence in the initiatives like Global Freshman's Academy and the Starbucks College Achievement Plan, which target students who are less likely to do well in online courses. They're probably a great PR investment for the institutions offering them, and they may help with recruitment too, but I'm not sure that the educational benefits will be that compelling for the students. Enough of that. Let me go back to the list of goals. So building and maintaining brand is next. And there have been some big winners here for institutions who could afford to make a big splash with the marketing strategy. Who does not remember University of California, Irvine's Walking Dead MOOC? Since then, UCI has had over 4 million enrollments across 93 courses. But a bit like the fact that MOOCs tend to serve well-educated students, they also seem to make famous universities even more famous. I really haven't heard too many stories about undiscovered colleges or universities suddenly gaining large enrollments as a result of offering MOOCs. Okay, so I'm going to skip over 4 for a minute because it segues into what I want to talk about next, and I couldn't quite fudge the numbers to make it go to the bottom. So, innovation. Well, that's definitely occurred. Countless instructors and universities have experimented with online and blended learning as a result of the high visibility of MOOCs. And as we've heard, there are new types of credentials popping up every day. It's so hard to keep track of them all. There's micromasters, nano degrees, specializations, edX certificates, and on and on. There are some stick-in-the-mud researchers who would say that MOOCs are not actually that innovative because the pedagogy is lecture-heavy and not particularly creative. And they do have a point, and we'll talk about some fixes for that later. The last item is research on teaching and learning, and there has been some stuff that we've learned here, some useful things like keep your videos and courses short, but we've failed dramatically to transfer that to other contexts, like this one. We're spending the first 2 hours of this entire conference this morning talking at you, rather than doing any kind of active learning. Another problem with the research on MOOCs is it's only relevant to people who actually do well learning in MOOCs. So although 80 million is a lot of people, there are another 6 billion or so out there who need to learn things too. And to date, MOOCs have not been their medium of choice. Another major issue is that researchers like me don't speak log data, and people who understand log data don't tend to speak to people like me. when we do talk, we don't always see eye to eye on things. What they might call data mining, I might call a grand fishing expedition, and what I call a large sample size, they would find simply laughable. So let's go back to improving educational outcomes. There haven't been that many studies that show real learning in MOOCs, but it isn't zero. However, being a bit jaded, I often think that higher education is much more about credentialing than it is about learning. And by that measure, there's no doubt that lots of people have earned certificates, alternative credentials, and even MOOC-based degrees, which may lead to better outcomes in the job market. So that leads me to my current study on the benefits and costs of alternative credentials. Just like I was intrigued about the potential of MOOCs to offer cost-effective education, I'm curious to know whether these alternative credentials, like micromasters and specializations, will offer educational, career, or financial benefits to participants. So I'm working with another colleague, Asya Kazi. All the people that work with me have to have a name ending in I. We're surveying students when they first embark on a micromasters or a specialization, and then again when they complete the credential, and then hopefully again a year later when they've had a chance to see what they've actually gained. To date, while we've had responses from around 2,000 people who have started these course series, not many have finished them yet. So for example, one university that's seen almost 2,000 participants start a micromasters and pay, only 13, that's 1-3, have completed 20 months later. But this is what I've found so far on what people are expecting to get out of these courses or these course series. I don't know if there are any psychologists in the audience, but I found this rather remarkable, that this group of people are so intent on improving their job performance, and yet, if you look further down, not so many are looking for job promotions or pay raises. This sounds like the ultimate in intrinsic motivation. I'd be happy to hire a few people that come from this group. Okay, so now let's move on to predictions about MOOCs that were made 5 years ago. As part of that study in which Devayani and I interviewed around 100 people, we asked them where they thought MOOCs would be in 5 years' time and how that might affect higher education. I've categorized the most popular ones that were mentioned here. The ones in green are the ones I think have been achieved already. The ones in blue are the ones that are either on their way or partially achieved. And the ones in orange are the ones I don't think have a chance of happening ever, at least not in the way people expected. I'm not going to spend time talking about the greens and blues, but let me address the oranges. So, meeting demand for higher education in rapidly developing countries. I don't think there's any doubt that MOOCs can serve as a very important resource for many of the admirable initiatives that are taking place in developing countries. However, I think we'd be kidding ourselves to think that MOOCs alone could solve that problem. I can assure you that these learners need far more supports to accompany the MOOCs that they're working with. On the XMOOC and CMOOC pedagogy, I think we saw earlier that they're really quite incompatible, and so while they may continue in parallel, I really don't see convergence happening. And the last item was very popular for a number of years ago, that students would run around putting degrees together for themselves, but it really hasn't happened. One astute professor I know never believed it in the first place. He said to me, if students don't know what they don't know, how can they possibly put together a course of study to fill a void they cannot even define? To date, he's been right, and my money's on him. So let me move to the last part of the talk, and I have what? 1 minute, but this takes about 9. Oh well, I'll be fast. Okay, so Actually, let me preface this. I was going to talk about suggestions about how MOOCs could develop over the next 7 years, but I want to preface it by telling you another thing that I have painfully learned through my own research, which is that people who make decisions about educational technology don't actually listen to people like me, and they don't consume our research. They're far more likely to be influenced by peers and colleagues in other institutions, especially institutions just like their own. It seems most of us are most comfortable in echo chambers where we can hear our ideas reaffirmed. So I guess John Mark was pretty brave putting me out here in front of you. So as I turn to future directions, I am going to throw off my researcher hat, and I'm going to promise you that most of what I'm going to say now is based purely on my own preferences, conjectures, and opinions. And I can assure you that the ideas were mostly influenced by people just like you. So, first order of business. MOOCs need a new name. Many are not so massive anymore. They've become less open, and most people who sign up don't consume them as courses. So here are some suggestions. Non-formal digital learning experiences, or NDLEs. Informal digital learning experiences, with the unfortunate acronym of IDLES, or they could be IDLEs. Plain old digital learning experiences, alternative credentials, although that's a little unfortunate with its acronym. I share Google Calendars with office colleagues, and one of them asked me why I was holding a weekly meeting on the air conditioning unit, even though it has been broken for 2 years, so I think they were being hopeful. And we could also just stick with the farmyard theme and go with voluntary online learning experiences, or VOLs. And I will say that most of these ideas were inspired by an article I read written by Joya Koyasimovic and colleagues. I'm going to go with NDLEs because it rolls well off my tongue. So next order of business, a few design fixes for NDLEs. How about using avatars or pedagogical support agents to provide hints and personalized feedback to participants? A big red X when you do something wrong is hardly motivating or instructive. So a friendly character with a friendly comment, and maybe a less friendly character when people are inattentive or off task. And if that's not attention grabbing enough, go for holograms. Imagine a renowned professor sitting, or standing, in your living room expounding on her latest theories. If nothing else, you might tidy up your room and get out of your pajamas before you power up your laptop. Text nudges have met with mixed success so far in MOOCs, but given their demonstrated success in other settings, they may still be worth the effort. And once you can pop out of your phone to berate your students up close and personal, we will have achieved the pinnacle of extrinsic motivation. Experiment with different types of dashboard, and don't assume everyone is motivated by competition against student 3099, who's finished 84% of the problems in 3 minutes and 12 seconds. Some people might be more motivated by competing against themselves or against other people like themselves. And some perhaps might even want to know whether they are better collaborators than competitors. How about giving them the opportunity to design the dashboard and put the goals that they set for themselves rather than you setting the goals? Try to use project-based learning rather than lectures as often as possible. Focus on real problems rather than contrived ones. One of the biggest disappointments around MOOCs has been their failure to reach a wider audience and less motivated or less well-prepared students. But let me ask a question of you here. How many people here have dropped out of college, other than Christian, and or gone to community college or a 2-year college elsewhere? All work at one. One. So, maybe, all due respect to the professors and instructional designers at elite universities, you may not be the best people to reach and teach the less well-prepared students. Try hiring some people who do know how to reach those. Another disappointment of NDLEs is the failure to achieve truly adaptive learning, and that might be too expensive to do in the foreseeable future, but you can do some less costly tailoring, like getting students to take a diagnostic assessment at the beginning of the course, pointing them to an easier course or a more advanced course, or perhaps just providing some modules that provide introductory or background material for students who need it. Being realistic, most of these things would be too expensive to do for all NDLEs. So how about not making so many duplicative courses? Just choose the ones that are really successful and invest in making those the courses of record globally. And make alternative options of the same course to provide more scaffolding and better suited learning experiences for less well-prepared students. So I'm almost finished, Jean-Marc. I know you're looking nervous. I'm going to move away from design issues to two bigger picture thoughts. And this is my last slide, just finishing there before you have a heart attack. So if you can save money by offering education at scale to well-prepared, highly motivated students, or by replacing some introductory materials with NDLEs, then take those savings and invest them in more experiential learning for the students who don't fare well in online learning experiences. So far, MOOCs have made more of a dent in how businesses provide employee training than in how higher education operates. But here's the scenario that should be keeping university administrators and faculty up at night. Over the next 7 years, NDLEs will be recognized by employers and gain credibility generally. It is now possible to cobble together degrees or the equivalent of one based on NDLEs from multiple universities. Not many students have the wherewithal to do it for themselves, let alone complete them. But what's to stop a new organization that's not a university doing just that, packaging courses for students, offering them on-demand support from non-tenured instructors, peer groups and other services for a fee. Let's call it the Alternative University, or AU for short, and coincidentally, AU is gold in the periodic table. That may be where edX is heading now, but I suspect you'll get pushback from consortium members who'll be uncomfortable with it. It might be easier for Coursera to do, being a for-profit. But I can assure you that if one of the two of you doesn't do it soon, someone else more nimble will. We're not there yet, but by 2025, university faculty who are not looking over their shoulder should be. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Hollands. I don't think we have time for questions.
Oh, yes. Sorry, I don't think you have time for questions.
No, if you are around for lunch or the afternoon reception, I think that'd be a great time to talk to Dr. Hollands about the talk. A lot of great information to digest, and thank you so much for speaking.
Okay. Yep. I love to get cornered, and I love to argue about things. So.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, so let me head right into our State of Open edX talk. What you see here are all the lovely people that helped to put together this conference, as well as people that work in the Open edX community in general, working for edX. You guys want to stand up just so people can identify you? Berkay, Roberta, Matt, Clayton. Okay. I'm going to breeze through these very quickly because we have a whole team of people. Obviously, we have our leadership team. You probably know most of these people, but Adam, Mark, Ed, do you want to stand up? All right. We have several teams here that you may want to talk about certain things that they're doing engineering and product-wise, starting with our business to consumer learners and educators, our business to business people, the core kind of DevOps team, and our architecture team. So when you see these people in the hallway, you may want to ask them what they're doing and how we can all work together. Thanks. and then on our product team. Incidentally, there will be a product BOF either today or tomorrow that you can, where you can talk to them about what's happening product-wise. And then finally, data science and accessibility. Education services. Okay, so now we get to the fun stuff that everyone likes to see every year where we talk about progress. And you've already seen the numbers from Anant showing massive growth just in the past year. And so I'm going to build on top of that and kind of show you some other things. You've already seen the chart that shows the exponential growth just from this past year and the number of courses and sites and how much of an increase that is. I think last year was the first time that Open edX sites had equaled the number of, sorry, let me rephrase that. The number of Open edX learners and courses had equaled that of edX.org. And now we've seen where that trend has continued, and we now have a case where Open edX sites and courses exceed, the number of learners exceed those on edX.org. We expect that to continue, especially as certain sites based on Open edX continue to accelerate. But this is as a community guy, this chart speaks to what I like to highlight in any community, and that is who's contributing, who's participating, who makes up the Open edX community. And if you look at the organizations who have been contributing to the Open edX community, those that have signed our contributor license agreement, we've now reached up to 50 contributing organizations. That's a great figure, and frankly, I think this sets us apart from any other organization in the online learning space. I don't think you'll see any other community with this level of engagement that we have. And this doesn't even get into the hundreds of people that have contributed as individuals to the Open edX community. I want to call out a few things that have been happening in the community over the past year. Individuals I wanted to commend for their work. The first is around Dockerization and building around Docker. You can see here Regis Bemo and Samuel Pakud, and my sincere apologies if I just butchered your names. I'm sure you'll tell me later how to actually pronounce it correctly. But they have been instrumental in creating Docker-based images to make it easier for people to download and use. You know, great software is only truly great if you can actually make use of it. And we want to make it more usable and accessible for everyone. And finally, another individual I want to call out is Lawrence Mcdaniel. He's been writing some great blog posts about getting started with Open edX. If these three people could stand up. There's Lawrence. There's someone. Thank you. And finally, I want to talk about the organizations that have been contributing code to the Open edX platform. Once again, OpenCraft beat last year's number. Last year they had 70. This year they had 96 pull requests that were merged. So props to them. You can see a list of other organizations that have contributed code to the code base this year. On the university side, MIT had just a hair more than Stanford as far as pull requests merged, but I'm sure Stanford can eclipse them next year. So, thanks. Some notable things that have been happening. You know, I've been very impressed with how much Microsoft has been engaged. I did not know how much they were engaged until I started here in February, but look for a contribution from them in the area of OAuth scopes, which will make it easier to use Open edX. AppSembler has led the charge on a lighter weight analytics and reporting plugin called Figures. Harvard is leading the way with a block store contribution working with OpenCraft. And Shuatong is another organization I want to call out in particular because when you think of Open edX-based learning platforms that are exploding in growth, they are certainly top of mind because they have 1,300 courses and over 10 million learners. So it's a testament to the power of community growth and what we're achieving here. Thanks. I now want to turn it over to our COO, Adam Medros. Adam, would you like to come up here? He's going to tell you about how we came to be at edX and what he's doing.
Thanks, John.
Thanks.
Hi, everyone. So I want to introduce myself. I'm Adam. I joined edX 6 months ago. I previously spent the last 13 years in the travel industry. Why is that relevant? Well, it's relevant because at TripAdvisor, what I helped build was a marketplace between travel suppliers and consumers. And I see a lot of parallels between what we're building at edX, between ultimately consumers, learners, and educators. What's different about my experience in travel industry versus edX is the reason we're here today. We're also building a platform, and all of you are helping us build that platform. As Jarmark reminded me, I do have an MBA. That's often a cautionary tale for a lot of people, but I'm told I'm one of the good ones. We'll see whether that plays out or not. So I want to tell you a little bit about some of the themes that I'm thinking about when I think about what we're going to work on at edX over the next couple of years. And really there are 5 themes right now that we're focusing on the edX side. Discovery, programs, revenue, B2B enterprise work, and architecture. Discovery is all about helping users find the right courses, get to the course that's right for them. There's a lot of work we can do there around tagging courses, around making search and navigation easier for consumers. Solving this problem that was mentioned before about, is this the right course for me? How do you choose across all the courses that are available? There's a lot of focus on programs and degrees. MicroMasters, professional certificates, master's programs. Those are all things we're investing in heavily in the coming year. Certainly revenue generation is top of mind for a lot of people, not just to make edX sustainable, but to make our partners sustainable, and ultimately to be able to fund all the work we want to build into the platform. Enterprise, as noted by Professor Holland, B2B certainly has invested heavily, businesses have invested heavily in adopting MOOC courses for their training, and there's lots of opportunity there. But the thing that's probably most important to the people in this room is this point about architecture. Ultimately, we want to help build with you the world's leading open source digital learning platform. And so investing in architecture is going to enable us over the next year to make features easier to build, faster to build, and more robust and at scale. This is what you'll hear about over the next few days, so we're excited that you're here. We're excited that you're continuing to work on the Open edX platform, and we're excited that you hopefully will join us in the shared vision of building this incredible platform. I'm going to turn it over to Mark Haseltine, who's our Chief Product Officer, and he's going to talk a little bit about the product. There you go.
Everyone. So it was my 4th Open edX conference, so I'm excited to be here. It's kind of amazing how much it's grown over the years. And in a new role this year, so Chief Product Officer is new to edX, and it's new to me, so I want to talk a little bit about what that means. But over the next 15, 20 minutes or so, we're going to cover the product delivery organization at edX. We're going to do, at a very high level, what's coming in Hawthorne and beyond. And we're going to talk a little bit about that architecture theme that Adam mentioned, because it's really important to our future. So I want to start with why a product organization and what is it at edX. So we're calling it a product delivery organization. The word delivery is important. It's about getting code to the Open edX code base as quickly as possible. And so what we've done is we've combined 4 independent orgs, so engineering, product management, user experience, and data science and analytics, into one team. And so the intent there really is speed. We want to start to remove some organizational barriers, get the process more smooth, and really make the handoffs cleaner. And all of these orgs are really essential to getting code to the code base. So why a chief product officer? So again, for the people in this room, I think the key takeaway there is there's just a single wringable neck, if you're familiar with that term, or the buck stops with me. There's no one else to blame, right? So if you have questions about how stuff is getting delivered, how quickly, problems, issues, I'm the last stop. So I'm also really trying to encourage this focus on customers, and customers in a broad sense, so enterprises, educators, and learners, and supporting this purposeful evolution of the platform. So architecture is really key to making this all work together. So before we dive into the Hawthorne release, I wanted to talk a little bit about our product philosophy. Hopefully people have seen this slide before. It hasn't changed much, but we're trying to do a bunch of things at once here, but the way to really think about it is, we're really trying to reach new learners, right, and help them drive the outcomes that they would like to achieve. We just had a great talk about what some of those objectives are, but those matter to us, while we're supporting educators to deliver these courses at scale and moving towards a sustainable model overall. So as we go through Hawthorne, you'll see these different themes repeated again and again. And as you know, our Open edX, we do named releases, or some of you may not know, but last year, Ginkgo was released just before the Open edX conference. We're in the middle of the Hawthorne release now. I would say we're neck deep in it. So that's coming soon, and planning Ironwood, which is the next one early next year. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Marco Morales, a member of our product management team. He's going to walk through the Hawthorne release.
Hi, everyone. So I've lost my voice a little bit, so what remains of it we'll use for the next 8 or so minutes to talk about these 4 themes that Mark highlighted in Hawthorne. So we can't cover all the things that were done in Hawthorne. It's a pretty large release. Those details and things you'll be able to find us afterwards and talk to us about any questions you may have. But we'll start with reach. So the thing to highlight here is today over half of our learners find us on edX.org at least via mobile devices. So one of the things we did in Hawthorne was really simplify the way that we do our front-end styling to enable us to make our web experience responsive. So a lot of learners are still finding us on the web, but through their mobile devices. And so that was a big lift for us and a really big change for helping find new learners, since, again, most of those learners are finding us on mobile devices. A second half of this sort of reach equation has to do with big investments on the mobile experience, on the applications themselves. So big changes to the navigation overall of the application, of the course experience, streamlining really basic actions like finding new courses or bulk downloading videos all at once, helping you sort of learn on the go and streamline that experience, while also building behind the scenes some additional tools to make it easier to add more languages for any of you who are actually running your own instances of the Open edX mobile apps. Moving on to sort of driving learner outcomes and what that means to us, there's so many things we could talk about and cover inside the course experience, but one thing we wanted to highlight are the changes that came into learner navigation and the visualization of progress. So this is a pretty major contribution for us, and it was spearheaded by OpenCraft, who worked with edX on sort of the architecture and sort of the plan for how to get this completion API in the platform. What we've landed and merged in Hawthorne is a first pass at helping visualize this progress, but the really exciting thing is all the other forms of progress that it can enable us to explore and try out and build into the experience now. Another thing to talk about is what happens outside of the course experience. So we have heard a couple times today about the role of these courses in how they can help provide evidence of your learning to people, whether they be employers or additional credit providers. So we're working right now actively on a digital sort of modern form of a transcript, helping you take a credential like a MicroMaster's credential and share it or send it for the purposes of an application or a follow-on credit pathway, again, to those credit partners or employers. Shifting gears a little bit to talk about educators, there are a lot of parts of the experience that we could cover, but one thing to highlight in particular was an investment that actually landed in Ginkgo around redoing the way we store and maintain and cache grades. So those changes on the architecture side have enabled us to add grade information in various places in the platform. A number of reports that you can download now have student grade information. There are edX Insight learner views that expose credit and grade information. So this, again, just another example of how across different parts of the platform you see these downstream benefits from those investments. The other big thing to highlight has to do with video and asset management. So videos and files, so files and uploads that you include as resources in your course, are big drivers of costs in the MOOC authoring space. In particular, video is a big cost driver. So any work we can do to help streamline the authoring, configuration, and management of this part of the platform, we think will help authors focus on building higher quality courses. So it's now the case that through this investment and work, that you can more easily sort of reference existing files and uploads and add them in and drop them into your course experience as you're authoring. That you can reference existing videos you've already uploaded instead of copy and pasting IDs, as was the case for previous releases. One of the other reasons we want to highlight this one is that this is both an example of a big investment on the authoring side, but also behind the scenes, the team at edX has worked on libraries of React components that can give us accessible components to hopefully, again, further speed up the way in which we can make changes like this in the future. The last area we wanted to cover was that sort of moving towards a sustainable model for the platform. So 2 things to highlight on the commerce side of things. The first is bundled program purchases. So for those of you who have enabled programs on your instances, this means that you can allow learners to buy all the courses that are inside a program at once, optionally with a discount. So this is for particular learners who are sort of opting into higher levels of commitment up front and are sort of able to do that with some sort of benefits to their bottom line or cost. Group purchases are one of the ways that we've started to expose commerce functionality for groups or businesses or enterprises. So you can buy a number of seats all at once and distribute those enrollment codes to learners as you wish. So building on the coupon code functionality that we have in the platform. The other thing we want to talk about has to do with a thing you've heard a number of times today around supporting enterprise learners. Rather than sort of diving into all the details of what we've done on that team or as part of that effort, wanted to take a step back and talk about how supporting enterprise learners impacts all different phases of the platform. So what does supporting Open edX for enterprises mean across all 4 of these areas? And there are representatives, I should note, from the enterprise team here today who can answer a lot more detailed questions that I'm going to cover here. But to start, enterprise learning means that an enterprise learner can use their existing learning management platform that their employer may have and see learning pathways curated by their organization that may meet their organizational learning needs or the learning needs of their role and their growth trajectory as an employee there. So seeing that on their own catalogs and systems is the first step. That's what discovery means for enterprise. The next step is streamlining the way that learners can go from discovering those courses to the learning experience. So providing single sign-on to let these enterprise learners go directly in through the platform, making enrollment, making reimbursement, making sort of the commerce side more streamlined and easier for those learners, getting them as quickly as possible into the learning experience. There are a number of other improvements in the future we see for enterprises in the learning space. You can imagine enterprise learners collaborating with other enterprise learners from their own company on specific projects or seeing specific content that makes sense for them from their corporation standpoint, but doesn't necessarily apply to the wider MOOC setting. Finally, with learner data consent, enterprises would be able to see the data from these learners and understand how their investment in their employee learning is having an impact on their progress, on their learning goals, which again may be tied to things that they see on their own internal systems. So a lot of work to be done in the future here. We're excited about all the people in the conference here that are interested in this sort of use case. But one last thing I'll cover is there are some things we've been doing on particularly the discovery and access side, providing enterprise branded onboardings, enabling sort of data from an enterprise standpoint to go back through that data consent. And again, some of the sort of catalog and discovery things we talked about. So a lot more to come here, especially on the data and reporting side next. But with that, I will hand it back over to Mark.
Thanks, Marco. So as Adam mentioned, we're at edX really organizing ourselves around these themes, and the product organization is no different. So I won't kind of reset them, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about like what does a theme mean to us, and to me it's about focus. So it's a well-defined area that is important to our customers that we are defining success criteria around. And importantly, assigning dedicated resources to come up with solutions to meet that success criteria. So really, clear goals, focus on doing things well, and one of the themes that I'm most excited about is the architecture theme. So I have asked our principal architect, Nimisha, to come up and talk a little bit about how we're thinking about that over the next year, and point you at some resources that you can use here at the conference to find out more. Nimisha?
Can you guys hear me? Yeah. Okay. So we heard from Anant vision about 2022 and high goals for that. We heard from Fiona a humbling perspective on that, and the yin and yang provides actually a very pragmatic way of thinking about how can we actually achieve and succeed for Open edX, for our enterprises and our global institutions, but most importantly, for our learners. Now, these are high goals. We can achieve them, yes, they seem high and they're hard, and there's a humbling perspective on it, but they are possible. As students of edX architecture, let's take a look at this from the perspective of the past, the current, and the future. If you look at our platform, yes, we have 5 years of a legacy platform now that has enabled us to achieve those 35 million learners, those 18,000 courses worldwide, and those 1,500 sites globally. So that is a great achievement and something that definitely we should give ourselves a pat on the back for. So, and how did we achieve that? It is because of our current edX platform. But looking at it from the perspective of what is there in our platform that might be holding us back from achieving where we want to go in 2022. From that perspective, historically, we haven't been doing a great job in deprecating and removing the old that is no longer needed for the future. So eliminating that from our platform are things that will allow us to manage our platform to where we want to go. Manage the cost and the cognitive load in understanding our platform and the support that we need to get where we want to. From that perspective, we are looking at, keep an eye out for OEPs. OEPs are Open edX proposals. They are our way of documenting architecturally significant decisions that we are making about our platform. Decisions around best practices, decisions around processes, decisions around the features and architectures and the designs. So there will be OEPs around deprecation. Let's go ahead and remove the things that we don't need. There will be OEPs around feature toggles. Feature toggles are multiple branches that you create temporarily, but eventually we want to get rid of the branches that are no longer needed. These are all very important things for us to be able to keep our platform streamlined as a very efficient engine for what we need in the future. So that's all legacy management. Now, if you think about currently on the platform, and what we need, how can we make our platform enable us to make the enhancements that we need to do? What are the features that we need to add to the platform? There, currently, yes, we have some things, some limitations that we need to make sure that we add to the platform. We want to have extensions so that people can use APIs and add plugins to the platform rather than trying to go in and trying to modify, make changes. Let people add those on. We want to be able to do that efficiently. As an Open edX community as well, it allows you to make changes to our platform, customize it for your own needs without always necessarily pushing them upstream to the core. So these are very important. The other thing is boundaries, having clear lines and abstractions to allow you to understand where one thing ends, the other thing begins. That allows us to have a more comprehensive understanding of our platform and figure out where to draw those lines. So domain-driven design is something that we've been talking a lot about internally at edX. We want to share that with you. On tomorrow's talk on the future directions of architecture, there's a breakout session where we'll talk a little bit more about domain-driven design and how that can lead into the microservices that we need for a more scalable architecture in the future. And today, later today, there will be a talk by Ari talking about splitting of the front end from the back end. And that will enable front end developers to move more quickly without needing to make changes to the back end. And using React and technology such as that to be able to enable that. So these are all things, once again, keep an eye out for Open edX proposals which will illustrate some of these things, as well as talk to the edX team and come to and listen to these architecture talks. The future directions of Open edX architecture tomorrow, later today, State Open edX front end. And then the birds of a feather on the product roadmap, I believe that's also today, happening later today with the product team, so you get to learn more about that. And Nick from our team will talk about the analytics work that he's been doing. So given all that, hopefully that will provide us a way to get to a practical place where we want to go for the platform. And then it will enable us to do what we want to do for the next generation of the features that would enable things like adaptive learning, things that would allow us to customize and personalize pathways for our learners, make it so that learners can efficiently engage in our platform. They can have the metacognition that they need so they can understand about the things that they do not know. And there's a lot, not talked about space repetition. This all comes in the category of adaptive learning. And we're working on, with the Open edX community and trying to figure out what are those APIs and those integrations that are needed to enable adaptive learning on our platform. And then there's also conversations that are happening about how do we open up how we are storing our content today, and can we enable more content sharing and content reuse? Can we make it so that the composition of content is more flexible and it's not always tied to courses, but it can be tied to a modular way of combining content and so forth. And so for that, there will be birds of a feather on adaptive learning. At the Dev Summit on Friday, there will be talks about what the pet name that we're using for the content repository is Blockstore right now, so you'll hear more about Blockstore. And so if you come on Friday to the Dev Summit, the OpenCraft team will talk about that. And lastly, Open edX proposals. Those are a means of documenting this, and you'll learn a lot more about that. We're looking forward to the Open edX community to review those Open edX proposals that we provide, but also contribute your own, provide your design ideas, and we can work together on this. So with this triple perspective of the legacy and our platform. So managing the legacy, enabling, enhancing our platform, we can leap to the future that we want to go to. And this is something that we definitely will work with the Open edX community. Your collaboration is definitely needed to help us get there. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to Berkay Baykal. Thank you. Berkay is the director of Open edX business, and he's going to talk about, he's done some really great, unique marketing analysis of Open edX, and I hope you enjoy his talk.
Thank you, Misha. Well, I was just doing the math. I've been with edX 7.5 months now, and I would say that I represent the marketing and business side for Open edX, and that shouldn't scare you off. I'm here to collaborate with you guys on value creation, not necessarily value capture. So I also have an MBA degree. Just to prove that, I put some numbers out there. What I want to do first is actually take an outside to inside look and bring you the dialogue that's happening outside of our community. I mean, there's a market out there for learning management systems, and learning management systems, traditional and continue to be emphasizing administrative use cases. It's a $7 billion market by 2020, and I've seen this number, by the way, inflated up to $16 billion by some companies. But on average, analysts are actually pointing out to $7 billion market with a 24 to 25% compounded annual growth rate, which is basically, if you cap between 2016 and 2020, that's the kind of growth that we are all going to enjoy and see. Core of that is in education, the three cores of it in enterprise, which shouldn't be a surprising factor. And some other interesting statistics about LMS is that organizations have plenty of it. In higher ed, that's not the case. Usually, maybe you will see 2 or 3, but in enterprises, 8, 12, 15, and I've seen 22 in one organization of different LMSs being used. In general, users don't like it, and they don't perceive it as a good platform. The user interface and user experience is pretty bad, and there's a big churn out there. There's consolidation because of the high number of LMSs, as well as the demands that the users have. I mean, we have a generation coming here that grew up with Facebook, and their expectations about user interface and user experience is a lot more than what it used to be. So market is actively also trying to define what an LMS is, and we as a community actually have the responsibility and ability to lead that discussion. I would like to challenge everybody, just like Anant challenged us, to collaborate and create a platform that will be the platform of choice for learning. Well, there are a lot of surveys about what the expectation of learners are from the kind of platforms that we have, and I thought I should just distill that in and add my kind of spin to it. I mean, we live in an environment where your thermostat actually tries to know who you are and what you prefer, right? So that kind of expectation translates to any kind of platform out there. The user and the learner actually would like we would like that platform actually to know us. We would like to do some feedback on gaps that we have, and the platform should help us when we need to learn something new, when we need a refresher. I mean, many years ago, actually, I didn't need a refresher on probability theory because we had a chipset that was failing with certain probabilities, and we had many of those. There will be, things happening in your life where you want to go and refresh what you learned in the past. And learn in time of need. I mean, more and more we actually live and work in project teams with cross-functional project teams. So we need to speak the same language, and maybe we have an assignment that cuts across disciplines. You want to go to this platform and pick and choose and learn content from many disciplines. Well, we want this platform to be a virtual assistant, right? I mean, Alexa talks to us. We can actually ask Alexa to play us the music that we want, and how about a recommendation system for this platform, and also help us, through the learning process in terms of giving a notification when we need to deliver something or when a deadline is approaching. And we want this to be a resource library. I mean, we used to put our books in a library. We don't have those anymore. Why not transform this platform into something where we can annotate the content we actually learned, and also put them in a special location where we know this is the kind of stuff that we covered through this platform. And let's go back to what we said, which is there is a big debate going on out there in terms of defining what an LMS is. LMS is not a new concept. It has been here for 2 decades, and traditionally it was in the enterprise all about compliance, and in the higher ed it was all about administrative use cases, right? And there came, just like Fiona was telling us, the MOOC year in 2011 and 2012. Market doesn't talk about the MOOC platforms at all because there's only one product out there, right? No other MOOC platform actually makes their software available to a community like we do. And they define themselves as being learner-centric compared to an LMS. Like lately, people actually use another definition, which is learning platform. This is considered to be a continuation of what LMS is. Well, why don't we expand on what we had with LMSs and include learner focus and surround LMS with a lot of tools to enhance the learning experience? Well, then the next concept people throw out there is learning experience platform, because then engagement is the key in defining this kind of product category. So learning in the process of doing something, using artificial intelligence, AR, VR technologies. And kind of like aside from that, there are other markets where people talk about games. You know, if you want to talk about some numbers out there, that's an $8 billion market. Social learning is another concept, and personalizing learning is another market definition and a platform. And these look like adjacent to the path in terms of defining LMS and the discourse in the market that's taking place in terms of redefining it. And just to join the party, I actually created my own acronym, and what I define as what the LMS should transform into as LEAP, which is Learning Experience and Assessment Platform. I mean, assessment is a big chunk of the learning experience, and not raising that up to a level where it's conceptually part of how we define the products, to me, is a mistake. And I would like the LEAP to pull in from games, social learning, and personalized learning, and make it something that's more complementary, more complete in terms of providing learning experiences to users, learners. And how I look at the product in terms of its evolution, looking at the functionality that it provides, I think there are 4 big chunks of things that we can talk about for the core of the product. One, we have content. Second, we actually manage the identity of the learner and we profile the learner. The third is the experience database. As the learner actually interacts with the content, we learn about them and their experience, and we capture that. All this needs to be bundled with AI so that actually we can serve the learner better. What will AI do? Well, to an author, it will help us meta-take the data so we make it more useful. Learner experiences, we are trying to leverage that actually to tie our LMS, our system LEAP, into adaptive engine so that we can personalize the content. And identity management will be an interesting concept for this community so that we can actually combine and federate all the open edX instances in the world where the content and the learner actually can float across these instances. The product itself is not complete without a large set of tools. And right now, the state of the art in terms of integration of these tools is to use LTI, which doesn't necessarily lend itself to a great user experience. So case-by-case basis, we are going to actually publish and work on standardized APIs with the technology partners, with the vendors out there. There will be discussion board, proctoring, video conferencing, and tools to annotate the content on your device of choice. There are a lot of online resources out there that's not part of our platform, and we would like to be able to make them more useful. And we would like a way of designing learning experiences that is capable of leveraging the new technology like AR, VR, games themselves, or the mobile devices. And not to forget, this whole product actually has to be part of an institution. We have to find easier ways of integrating with whether this is a student information system or an enterprise ERP system in better ways. Here's something that I would like to share with you. I mean, we've been working on a new Open edX website that will have a marketing phase. And our goal here is basically to create awareness and grow the community. It will have a very modern look. We're at the wireframing stage, and this is kind of like a very early on rendering of how it will look like. And like everybody else did here, I'm going to just reiterate the same message. Let's make the platform of choice for learning. We are here and ready and available for collaboration. Let's move this platform forward. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Berkay. We have about 5 to 10 minutes, actually 10 minutes, until lunchtime. I promise you I won't keep you between your food any longer than we have to, so we're gonna go through this. But I think there are two basic themes for this conference. One was 5 years of Open edX. I don't know how many of you are aware, but on Friday, June 1st, it will have been 5 years since we first published Open edX live in an open source repository on GitHub. That's 5 years. And I think it's important to understand where we've been so we can kind of see better about where we're going. In those 5 years, we've accomplished quite a lot, but as we've seen today, there's still much to do. So when we talk about the Open edX community and how we're coming together to make something that's greater than the sum of its parts, the question is, how do we do that? What are the next 5 years going to look like? How are we going to accomplish the goals that we've set out to reach? I didn't want Fiona to be alone in controversial slides today, so I thought I would post kind of what I see as a snapshot of what our governance looks like today. If you kind of look at what this slide means, we're kind of talking about, when I came on board 4 months ago, I was kind of thinking about where does Open edX stand in the pantheon of open source communities and projects? And as I took a look around, I kind of saw things like Drupal, WordPress, perhaps even MongoDB, things where you have a core community, a core bit of code that's managed and governed by the parent vendor or company that originated that project. But then you've got much more beyond that. When you go beyond the core code, you've got an astounding number of developers, individuals, and contributing companies who are making a lot of things outside of the core platform that make it really special and unique and drive it forward. And in the past, as Nimisha mentioned, we may not have always been on top of that piece of it, but I can assure you we have guaranteed we have devoted a lot of time over the last 6 months and certainly going forward the rest of the year and into the future, a lot of time and effort around getting that middle piece, the plugins and extensions right, making sure the APIs are extensible and reusable, making sure they're easy for people to consume, but also build on top of, so that we can adequately support the massive growth that's happening on the plugins and extension side. And when you look at that piece, it's owned and governed by whoever creates the code. On the left, if you look at the core platform, it's, you sign a contributor agreement, you contribute your code to Open edX, and it either gets accepted or rejected. But that middle piece, that's up to the community to define. And certainly when you go over to the right side on the commercial ecosystem that's building around Open edX, and it's a substantial commercial ecosystem, as you can see from the people who are here today, that stuff is all kind of up to you to define and grow and make larger. And my job is to enable and empower you to do more with that, to make it so it all works together in some sort of cohesive way. I'm more than happy to talk to anyone who has questions about kind of the governance model and where we're going with that. I know there may be questions from people in the audience, so I'll be happy to take those later. There are any number of ways to contribute to the Open edX community and project and ecosystem. I just want to go over a couple here. First of all, one thing we really want to do is we want to understand what is the total footprint of Open edX. What are the total number of users? What are they using it for? And those are things that, if we can, working with you, I'm hoping we can get better data about that. Certainly the first step in that is making sure that you have the Powered by Open edX logo so that we can count you among the list of sites that we have constantly running. But there are other ways. I mentioned the Slack channel earlier. Lots of good channels that you want to be a part of and participate in. An easy way for first-time contributors to make their impact or mark on an open source community is to do it with translations. We are clients of Transifex, which is a translation service. It's something that you can use to translate strings and contribute back to the community. It's a great first way to get your feet wet when it comes to contributing. But there are other ways, like right here at this conference. There is a table to the left of the registration table where you can sign up for Birds of a Feather sessions. That's a great way to hear what community members are doing and ways that you can participate. And then that last item there is we have on Friday, it's not part of the official program, but there's a developer summit on Friday where we're going to be talking about what are the projects that we're working on over the next year. We want to hear what you are working on, and we want you to know what we're working on, so we can get together and share more going forward, and again, accomplish the goals that we set out to do. But then I want to kind of end on the second major theme of the conference, and that is the future of education is open source. And what I mean by that is, about 13 years ago, I wrote an article called There Is No Open Source Community. The main thrust of that article was that open source was something that was taking over the technology world because of economic trends. And so this theme here kind of builds on that, but it adds kind of a moral component to it. This is the first time I've worked for an organization with a true social mission. And so when you think about the future of education as open source, it's not just that open source process is taking over the education industry, although I think it will. It's more like we're not just creating online tools and services for people to consume education, although we do that and we do it well. It's more about, because we enable and empower people to take the code and to do what they want with it, we are enabling you to create new learners, but those learners can then become educators. And because we have everything in the open, those educators can become builders. We don't know the twists and turns that online education are going to take over the next 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. So we have to be prepared for an eventuality that we don't know. This is a way to do that. There are hundreds of thousands of use cases around the world that we don't know about, we can't prepare for. But because we have an open source platform that's truly collaborative, that everyone in this room contributes to, you have the ability to take this platform and apply it to things that we don't even know are going to happen or are already happening. So when I say the future of education is open source, I want everyone who's here to remember why we're here, what our mission is, what our goal is, and let's work together and create something that is far greater than the sum of its parts. Thank you. Okay, I think we're going to, so we have, for the reception this evening, is sponsored by Microsoft, and there is a representative from Microsoft who's going to come up here to the podium and give a short, brief talk about what they're doing, right? Excellent. Here you go. What's that? Oh. Oh, you want to end the vote?
Welcome, everyone. On behalf of Microsoft, I'm really proud to represent Microsoft and welcome all of you to the Open edX conference. And I want to lay out a couple of things from a Microsoft perspective. Two things that Microsoft is bringing to the table in terms of Open edX and to the edX community is innovation in the form of learning and innovation to the Open edX platform. Microsoft has been a key partner with edX. We started about 3 years ago in the 6 years journey of edX. We started with about 5 courses, or less than 10 courses in 2015. And today we are about 180 plus courses on edX, participating on the MOOC platform. Our vision is basically shared with edX, where we want to basically democratize learning and bring learning to the masses. In that shared vision with MicroMasters, Microsoft also has the Microsoft Professional Program, where we are sort of bringing skilling and education to professionals. And in that, we've basically released, in our first journey, we released the Microsoft program for data science. And now we have about 8 courses, all the way from bringing entry-level software development all the way to AI. That's something that we're going to be releasing soon. It's an entire program on artificial intelligence. I also want to take this opportunity to thank our OpenEdX partners and OpenEdX extenders. We started last year with about 1 pilot program with 4 install base of about 4 OpenEdX sites, and today we have an upwards of 160 sites, which is, based on the numbers, we are contributing to about 10% of the OpenEdX ecosystem, and Microsoft is proud to present in that. The other things that we're bringing to the table is also contribution to the OpenEdX platform in terms of the OAuth that some of my partners and friends who are represented here will share in the session today and also tomorrow. So we have lightning talks where we sort of will share our vision there. The other thing we're also bringing up from an innovation perspective is the Grades API, an ability to have real-time API back to your sponsors or to your publishers based on your OpenEdX installation. So those are the 2 things I want to cover, and I also want to thank our edX partners, and I also want to thank the OpenEdX community and partners that we work with in a mutually beneficial relationship to say that we couldn't have achieved this without your cooperation. And from a Microsoft perspective, the one thing I want to lay out is Microsoft is committed to the OpenEdX platform and to edX, where we'll continue to bring in courses and also continue to contribute to the OpenEdX platform as such. And we look forward to seeing you at the reception.
Thank you. Excellent. Thank you. Okay, so it is lunchtime. If you were here yesterday and you had lunch, it is not there. It is 1 floor up from registration. Yesterday you went downstairs for lunch. Today you're going upstairs. So 1 floor up from registration. You'll have people outside guiding you. Thank you so much for being here. It's bright.